Hello, hello, good evening, and welcome to A Moment with Vivacious. It's so good to be back. Last week we had hurricane. Atlanta had hurricane. It was not my area. I was good, thank God, but a lot of places really still trying to clean up. So we want to be praying for those people, not only in Atlanta, but everybody that was in the path of Hurricane Helene. We want to pray for them. And I haven't been on since the rally at Milledgeville. It was very successful. People came out, speakers came out, and we want the voice of the real people to be heard in our elections and in our rule in our cities. So we have to have more of those um, come out to the meat rallies so the voice of the people can be heard. Well, tonight I'm excited. I'm excited. I have my friend Nikki Sanders with me. Let me tell y'all something. The comfort of her hug is unmeasurable. All I feel is love when I get hugs from that girl. When I see her, I go running. But I want to thank y'all for joining in. Look, everybody alive in one way or another deal with somebody with addictions. So tonight is going to be very, very important. So while we have our intro, I want you to, um, of course, I'm sure everybody on has liked. And if you haven't subscribed, if this is your first time, subscribe. And be back with two friends, at least. See you in just a moment. Welcome, wel- welcome to a moment with welcome to welcome to a moment with Vivacious, a freedom ride where we the people gather to build ourselves, our family, our community, and our nation. For the sound of America for Progress has reached critical mass. Understanding that we must put aside our differences to focus on the greater good. This is a place of collaboration to rebuild and restore our nation. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious. Hello, hello, and today we have with us Nikki Sanders. She's an expert in her field. I've seen her work miracles with people's lives. Um, we depend on her in the community to bring in people. So, Nikki, hello.
Hi.
We are so glad to have you here. Can you give us a
I'm
little
glad to be
introduction? I'm sorry.
I said I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it's exciting to have you here. Just a word that can help families. So many families need help in this area. I'm just thinking of some in my own family. But we're so glad to have you here. This is a very serious conversation that can bring a lot of our lives to a better place. So introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little about you and what you do.
So, my name's Nikki Sanders. I am a person in long term recovery. What that means to me is it's been over 7 years since I have felt the need to use any substances to change the way I feel or think, to have to deal with reality. Uh, After 18 years in addiction, um, I finally broke those chains that were holding me down. But to do it, I ended up making some bad decisions that led me to prison. And I have now used my lived experience to help other people that suffer from addiction and mental health and people that are incarcerated.
And you do a great job at that. You do a great job. So
Thanks.
I'm gonna ask you a question. Some people, I heard a girl tell me, I don't need drugs to alter my mind. I just do drugs because I like it. I like being high. So what is that like? Like
Um,
you as a counselor?
So I was a functioning addict um, most of my addiction, which just means like I had, my house, my kids, my job. I did everything I was supposed to do, and I just, dibbled and dabbled. But I was a functioning addict until I wasn't a functioning addict. Um, and I've met people that just do it here and there because they like it. But the thing is especially right now with fentanyl is in everything. So you can do it one time and you've done it a million times, and that one time can be the one that kills you. And you're not even a fentanyl user.
What are some of the signs of um, fentanyl, fentanyl use? And I see a lot
Um,
of advertisements say use Narcan. How would somebody know to use Narcan?
so usually if it's fentanyl or opiates, you'll notice them like falling asleep, sitting there and doing the nod thing where they're like, and you're like, what is going on? Um, they itch a lot. They'll rub their face. Um, but when there's a fentanyl overdose or even an opiate overdose, which is what Narcan can be used for, not just fentanyl, um, it's, they have shallow breathing. They are normally passed out. Um, and their heart rate is very low. And the great thing about Narcan is even if it's not a fentanyl overdose or an opiate overdose, it doesn't harm them to give them Narcan.
Well, that's good. So tell us some of the things because I'm meeting so many. Nola reads and Secret says hi, and we're so glad to have both of you here, and I'm so grateful for your faithfulness. So when people, what are some of the signs? Because children are younger and younger and younger, using drugs and coming in with positive drug screens, and parents have no clue.
No
Could you
clue.
talk about that? Children and drugs, and what are some of the signs?
I would just say if your child is more withdrawn than usual. Sorry, my dog's trying to get in the video too. Um, if your child becomes more withdrawn than normal, if they are avoiding you or avoiding eye contact, um, I would say like if they don't want to look you in the I said that avoiding eye contact. Um, and just pay attention. Like I know it's hard because teenagers are teenagers and they're going to do what teenagers do. It's hard. I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I just have open communication with them. I make sure that it's a safe place for them to come talk to me about anything. Um, and I'll tell them like it's hard not to get mad. I understand that or get upset. But they have to know that they can come to you to tell you those things and you're not going to get upset.
I've heard a couple of parents come to us to say he has to have drugs every day, like and just weary about it. What are some of the things that people can do?
Repeat that for me.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that parents can do, to help their children who have fell into this? I have to have drugs every day. And I'm
It's
talking
really
about
hard.
children like 12, 13, 14.
Okay, so for like teenagers and kids, um, at that point, it's not really their choice whether they go and get help. As a parent, you can go and have your child signed in to a crisis stabilization unit for detox. They've got places there's rehabs for teenagers. It's really important to get them in there as early as possible if you realize that your child already has an addiction problem. My addiction started at 14. But I grew up in a home where it was normal. And I know that that's not the normal. Most parents aren't sitting there doing substances with their children, but nipping it in the bud at an early age and just making sure your kids know that you love them and you understand that this is hard, and explaining to them, the science of addiction. For families to get educated on the disease of addiction is really important, because then they can say, like, hey, I understand this is a disease and you like doing it because of the dopamine increase, the reward that you get automatically from it. I understand that, but you understand that, that's not healthy. There's other ways for you to get that same fulfillment without doing drugs or alcohol. And normally at that age, they're doing it to fit in with the friends that they have, or they're doing it to self-medicate a mental health or whatever they have going on that they don't want to deal with already.
Well, talk to us about the science of the disease, because I can look at that. Sometimes I think I want to understand, and sometimes maybe I just don't want to understand. But if it's a disease and the person will get help, this is complicated for somebody who's never been here to understand. Okay, it was a disease. You got help. You got off drugs, and the minute you got back in society, you back on drugs. Talk to us about the disease process of addiction.
So let's say it's like cancer, okay? You have cancer and you do chemo. So it goes into remission, right?
Right.
And then you go back out and you don't take any more meds. And sometimes the cancer comes back, right? So then you do the meds again. You do the chemo again. That's kind of how addiction is. When you go into treatment or you're doing medicated assisted treatment like Suboxone or naltrexone or any of those, you're treating the problem. But then if they don't continue with treating it afterwards, and that means getting connected with other people in recovery, that means going and getting counseling, going to groups or meetings like AA and NA and all recovery meetings, it's likely, and you don't have that support around you, it's more likely that you're going to have a setback and go back to addiction.
It's difficult for people that live with those that have addiction. They lose a lot, so their choice is like really horrible for the household. Can you talk to us about some of that?
Yeah, it is really hard. That's one thing I have to say is you lose everything in addiction. And once you come out of it, it's kind of hard. So I always tell people the great thing about recovery is you get your feelings back. The bad thing about recovery is you get your feelings back, because now you have to feel all those feels that you haven't felt in so long. And it's a lot. And sometimes it's too much. And you've already created all this wreckage in your pathway of this hurricane that you have made.
So what do you mean about feels? You get all of these feels back.
You get all your feelings back. So, when you're in addiction, you're staying, high or so engaged in whatever else that you're not checked into reality. You're not feeling the regret or the sadness or the disappointment or whatever that feeling is, those bad feelings. You're not having to feel those. But the thing is you don't feel all the great things either. I can remember, you know, being with my kids and doing things with my kids that I should have, had great feelings for. But because I was intoxicated, I didn't have those feelings like I should have. But now I get to experience all those things, the joy of, going to my son's football games, the joy of, hanging out with my daughter, just laying in the bed watching movies. Um, you know, but along with that comes, you know, depression every once in a while. Recovery is not always glorious and it's not always great. It's hard. And you still have to deal with life without putting substances on it. So it's different.
So, what are some of the things that you can um, tell people that's addicted or family members? Because family members are worn out with your addiction too. And it may look insensitive, but especially, let's talk about this too, especially when you're not only addicted, you have mental health issues. So you're out here on drugs and you have mental health issues and you're just into the drugs. Can we talk about that?
So a lot of times people that have mental health are using drugs or alcohol to self-medicate the mental health. I learned very early in my recovery that my depression that I'd had my whole life pretty much was what led me into using drugs because I wanted to not think about it. I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to deal with it. So I got high. So I had to take care of not just the substance use, but the mental health side of it too at the same time because otherwise they fed each other.
Alex Suver said, yep. Um, so I'm trying to get to the family's feelings, if we could talk about that. How, that mother feels. I see so many older women with young sons
Yes.
that call to see about their son, and he's really grown, but she has the pain, that the joy of having him in the facility, but the pain of watching her son go through this. The things that in some families just want to cut you off. You want to keep doing that, you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know. So I think that's the point I am with my grandson. And I mean with my godson, praise God, my grandson will never have that issue. I cast that down. But can we talk about the family side and how we can help things that can help the family?
Like I said earlier, um, them educating themselves on addiction will help them so much because they'll understand how it's a disease. But also, having that open communication that I talked about earlier, no judgment, which I'm sure, Vivacious, that you have that open communication with no judgment. But also having a supportive environment. And when I say supportive, I don't mean enabling. A lot of families think that, them paying their bills or letting them, continue paying for their car or giving them money is being supportive. No, that's enabling. Um, when I say supportive, I mean, support them in getting help, whatever that looks like for them. Some people need rehab, some people need counseling, some people need peer support. There are different pathways to recovery. It's not a one way fix all,
Yeah, because
you know?
everybody. I wanna
And
read a few comments, but I wanna come back to the road to recovery. We have Alex said, and we want to help her. She says, "I drink to escape reality." Sigrid says, "What are some of the things you do when you get depressed?" And Nola Reed said, "Not grandson. How can the family help without triggering?" So that's three things. Alex says, "I drink to escape reality." Sigrid says, "What are some of the things you do when you get depressed?" And Nola Reed's wanting to know, how can the family help without triggering?
okay, so I would definitely see about getting some peer support. I don't know what area you're in, Alex, or any of y'all, but there's places called RCOs. They're recovery community organizations. Um, there's like 62, maybe something like that. I don't remember now. But
In
if
the
you
state,
go on,
is that the
I'm
state
sorry.
of is that the state of Georgia?
Yes. So in the state of Georgia, there is a handful of them. Let's just say that. And there's usually one that's near, and you can go to the Georgia Council for Recovery to find where one is near you. And what you'll find at a recovery community organization is peer support. So people that are like me, that have that lived experience in addiction, that are now in recovery and want to help other people. And you just go and you can talk to them. They'll help you figure out what your pathway for recovery looks like. Um, and it's like having a counselor, but a counselor that's been there and done that. Okay. Um, Secret, what was yours again?
Sigrid says, "What are some of the things you do when you get depressed?"
Some of the things I do when I get depressed are I, so without reaching out to anybody else, I will do arts and crafts. I like to paint. Um, Sometimes I get out here and clean. My husband knows something's going on if he comes home and the whole house is clean because I'm usually not that guy. um, and I'll reach out to people like my support system, my best friend, my friends that I've made in recovery, my peer supports. That's what I do when I'm getting depressed. Because a lot of times that's when, even after 7 years, that's when I think about, going and getting some wine. It's just wine. What's it going to hurt? It's going to hurt me in the long run because I know that I couldn't deal with my feelings at the time, you know? Um, some other things you can do, it's just whatever you enjoy doing. It could be getting out of the house and going to the park. It could be going for a ride, um, listening to music, dancing. I like to hang out with my kids. My kids are very aware of my addiction. They're very aware of, um, they're part of my recovery. They're 19 and 16 now. So, needless to say, I was in addiction for most of their life. But for the past 7 years, they've got to see me, sober and serene. So, you have to figure out what are your glimmers, and a glimmer is the opposite of a trigger. Everybody knows what a trigger is, right? It's something that makes you have those bad feelings. A glimmer is something that makes you happy, that makes you smile, that makes you think about happy thoughts. One for me, and everybody laughs at me, is bubbles. I love bubbles. I bought a bubble blowing machine just because bubbles make me happy, you know? And it's something so silly and so simple.
And Um, Nola Reeds wants to know how can the family help without triggering?
Um,
Because when the family, look, you're doing this again. Didn't I tell you? You drank up all my stuff. You know, that's where family
yeah,
is.
absolutely. I get it. Part of that is stigma too, stigma is really triggering for people, you know. Why can't you get it right? You're never going to learn. Those kind of things make you think, yeah, I'm never going to learn. I'm never going to get this. You're right. I'm never going to change, you know. It's really hard. And that's where that supportive environment comes from. Instead of attacking, and that's how that kind of comes across to another person, to the other person. Um, you know, it can be more like, I noticed that my wine was gone, and I'm not blaming you. I just know that, you have a is there something you want to talk about? Instead of saying, I know you got a problem and I know you did it. Like, okay, so I noticed my wine's gone. Is there something you want to talk about? And they're like, well, I didn't take it. Okay, well, what was going on today? Or what went on yesterday? And see what how they were mentally when it happened. And usually, they were triggered by something that led to um the relapse or the slip. So they'll talk about that, and then, and yeah, so I was feeling this way, and yeah, I did drink it, or I did go use.
Jeremy says, we love you, Nikki. You better call me. Jordan says, so proud of how far you've come. Look at you shine, sister. I love you. Keep changing the world a little bit at a time. And I agree with him. And then
That's my
Jeremy
baby sister.
and Jeremy Ramey says, basically, what your why, what, okay, she raised it up for me. Jeremy basically said, what your why, what makes you want to stay clean. Also, play the tape all the way through, remembering what I took from you.
What it took from you.
Oh, play the tape
So,
all. Okay, talk about that.
so Jeremy is one of my peers, one of my friends also. Um, he's a great advocate for recovery. He does this thing called the Port Team. I'll tell y'all about that. But so what your why is? I don't know. Have you ever seen that video on YouTube by Michael B? I don't remember, but it's Know Your Why. Just type in Know Your Why,
Okay.
and he
So
talks
what is the
about,
song?
huh?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. What the song is.
So what he talks about is um, knowing why you're doing something gives it more power than just knowing what you're doing. So if I know okay, so I'm going to stay clean, but why am I staying clean? Why am I staying sober? Am I doing it because to make everybody else happy? That's not going to help because ultimately it's not what you want. Um, that's what know your why is. My why is for my family, for myself, and for God and for others. Playing the tape all the way through, that's talking about um, don't just stop where you're at. Look at the big picture, right? So if I do this today, what is that going to look like tomorrow and next week and next month and next year? But if I just stop right here on today, what's that going to look like?
So when we're thinking of this, this is going in my mind. How I've never had to that I remember. I never had to live with someone that was addicted. Um, but I've watched people who've been addicted, and sometimes I'm hearing their story. What really makes me think that it could be illness is that it's come down through the generations. My dad did it, now I'm doing it, and it's just what it is. But on the other side, I'm thinking, how selfish can you be that your family have to lose everything because you're addicted? Bring some balance, bring some healing, not only for the person on the drugs. Help us to understand as family members.
Um, that's really hard because, even as an addict, I thought I cared, you know.
And you did, but you had something stopping you. Am I correct?
Yeah, because there is that selfish part of you, that selfish part of the disease that, you know what, if I just get high or I stay drunk, I'm not going to have to deal with it anyways. So it's kind of like a let me do this so I don't have to deal with the pain I'm causing, you know? Um, it's very hard, you know? Um, and that's probably one of those things that is the hardest to deal with in early recovery is looking at all the aftermath that you've caused, looking at what you've done to your mom, your dad, your children, the people that are around you that love you. Um, Mine was the hardest to deal with what I did to my kids because of my addiction. Um, and, even though I'm in recovery for the last 7 years, like, they're still, I'm still dealing with the aftermath of my addiction, you know. My daughter has horrible anxiety. She deals with a lot of depression as well. Uh, my son has really bad anger issues at times. Um, and that's from me not being there because of my addiction, and in early recovery, those are hard things to deal with, especially when they're still mad about it too. No, you can't see your kids. No, you can't come to my house. But I'm clean. Okay, what does that mean? You've been clean before and then you went right back. Those are the things that we as addicts hear and have to deal with in early recovery. And it's hard to accept that and to have faith that God's going to make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as an addict, we want that instant gratification. Okay, I'm clean now. Give me everything I lost. Give it back to me right now. But that's not how the world works. And it's hard. It's hard to stay clean thinking, it's hard to stay sober in the early days because of all those emotions that you're having to feel. That's why having the support of other people in recovery is so important, because those people understand, and those people are there to talk you off the ledge before you go out and score again, or come pick you up at 2 o'clock in the morning because you're fixing to go out and do something you shouldn't do, and or talk to you on the phone. There's also, um, like I said, the peer support thing is amazing because those people understand. Um, it's kind of like having a sponsor, but different. Um, it's a game changer to me. For me, in my addiction, I'd gone to counseling a couple of times, but I was like, y'all don't know about me and my problem. You just read about it in a book. How are you going to tell me what I need to do or how I'm feeling? And when I met a peer support, my first peer support, and she told me she'd been to prison and she'd been on drugs and she'd done this and she'd done that, I was like, tell me more. And I remember telling her in prison, like, I want to be like you when I grow up. And she told me, I seen her at a training a few months ago, and she was like, guess what? You're all grown up.
So, oh, that's beautiful. Jeremy says releases, doing drugs releases something called dopamine that feels very good. To bring it into perspective, having the same releases around 20,000 dopamine at one time, but like methamphetamines, releases about 10 times that much. So you can
Yep.
understand how it can become very addictive.
But that also, all that massive dopamine causes an unhealthy drive to continue that. And it also changes the effects that your thoughts and feelings and behaviors are now as well. So
And
your
physically,
moral,
not good for
your
your heart.
moral,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
your moral compass, like things that you never thought you would do, you now, all right, fine. You know, things that are important to you aren't so important anymore.
Um, just the other day at work, I saw somebody just, and I'm gonna use my word, tripping so bad. They had just come in tripping so bad. I was like, this, Jeremy, this kind of helped me understand, can see what I was saying. Lord, these drugs make you do all of this. These people, what in the world is this power? I said that just the other day. Just the other day. There's a guy that comes sometime. I remember when he first came, he was on drugs really bad, and he come to the medication with you. That's where I have all my counsel sessions. And he was saying, I'm getting off of it. I'm going to rehab. They're sending me to rehab. I'm getting off these drugs. I want to be with my babies. I want to see my children. And just a few weeks ago, when I saw him, I just wanted to cry because his whole mind is gone. He may have had some mental health issues um, that led him to drugs. His history before that was he was just drugs. He didn't have anything noted. Um, from his first time when he came in, but I've only been there for 3 years. And in 3.5 years, this dude's whole mind is like gone. And if people could only understand, can we talk about, Jeremy says, um, but now that I do all my service work, I get to repay the community has helped me so much. You can't put a price on that, and you can't. You can't put a price on
No,
that. And that's why I'm grateful to you. That's what you do every day. And it's not a family that's here. America is so anesthetized in one way or another. Yeah, when you use the street drugs, everybody know that you're an addict. But some people use other drugs. They hold on to something else to satisfy them. And to me, they're in a harder spot because it's not so easy to go out, and get the help that you need when something else is your issue, or society won't allow you, because I was talking to a young lady who used to do drugs and she don't do drugs anymore. And I said, yeah, we're going to have to come with an undercover camp for drug addicts because so many, just medical professionals that I know, not that I know personally, but I know so many of us are hooked on drugs, but we can't say that. We won't be able to work. we'll lose our license. I don't know if you, who was that doctor that had that TV show? He was hooked on pills. I used to watch him every week. I loved him though. But so many of us suffer from hidden. And I also want to talk about, should the family get counseling? I know I just said a whole lot. Can you cover some of that?
So, my church, we have a Thursday. Our midweek meeting is a recovery meeting, but half the people that are in that Thursday night meeting aren't in recovery from substances. We call it hurts, habits, and hangups. So that can be working, letting things hold you back in life, or things that you're holding on to so close that you won't let go of, that determine how you deal with other things or other people in your life, can be an addiction. You're holding on to that abuse that you suffered as a child. You're holding on to that control that you have to have over everything in your life. You're holding on to the fact that you don't feel good enough, whether it be your depression, whether it be that you're envious of others. You know, all of those things are a form of addiction. Um, and the great thing that is so wonderful is um, we can overcome all of those. Okay. Um, I know a lot of people have heard of the 12 steps for addiction and alcohol. Um, the great thing about 12 steps is you can use it for literally anything. So the first step is admitting you're powerless over your addiction. So instead of saying I'm powerless over my addiction, I'm powerless over control. I'm powerless over depression. I'm powerless over the abuse that I suffered as a child. And then working those steps and inserting whatever your hurt, habit, or hang up is. It'll help you. I'm telling you. I have seen it with people that have never suffered from addiction before, and they do the 12 steps with whatever their thing is, and they're like, I never really thought about being able to use the 12 steps to do this. Um, and then you were talking about, what else did you say? Vivacious.
Girl, I was talking about my patient that when he first came 3.5 years ago, he was addicted to drugs. I mean, he was going to rehab.
Yes.
I got to get my kids back. And
Yes.
today he don't even have a month. If I mention his kids, it's
Yeah.
like there's no connection with him in the real world. It has just mentally
Yeah.
destroyed him, drugs. What kind of drugs do that, and how can we help our family?
So there's such thing as a drug psychosis. The drugs really eat away, and it doesn't happen to everyone, you know, but it can. And it could be that they did too much one time, or it could be that they did a bad batch. It could be, a number of things that cause a person to get to that point. I have seen it many times in my recovery, and probably more times in my addiction, where, Paul ain't Paul no more. You know, um,
Oh man, yeah.
and it's hard. And sometimes there is no coming back from that point. Now they can still get recovery, but they won't ever be the same person that they were before. And I mean, that's kind of how that's how I am. I'm not the same person I was before addiction. I am, I'm not the same person before addiction. I'm not the same person as I was in addiction, I have to use all that to be this different version. And, it's just, you kind of have to go with it. If that's, if Paul ain't Paul no more, but Paul isn't using drugs, okay, well, what does life look like for Paul now? Paul can't go work a 40-hour job. Paul, might need to go bag some groceries or get some Social Security. But what does that look like as family members? That's hard.
Yeah, I don't think he'll ever. I don't even know if he would know his children if somebody. He's like really bad. But I knew a guy when I was younger that had got some bad drugs that happened to. But it can be so sad. It can be so sad. And like I'm gonna talk about this part. A family member. I'm not gonna, of course, say nobody's name. Who've been on drugs for many years, and it's just the way of life for him. It's not discussable. It's like he don't care what danger he put the family in, or where the family's gonna end up. My family on can be very prosperous in some areas, so they just gonna get me off if I get in trouble, and it happens every time, and he goes on and on. And I doubt if at this age that he is gonna even try to stop. But then how do we break that generational thing? Is I don't understand it. Like is the I don't know.
So
It's never
the
been a
hardest
discussion
thing,
on I'm gonna do better. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, you're fine. I mean, there's having that discussion with him. And if he's not willing to do better, then, you have to build those boundaries. That was something I struggled with a lot, um, because my dad was an addict, you know. It was really hard for me when I got out of prison. I didn't even let my dad know I got out for 2 weeks. And he only found out because someone else I knew told him. And um, I had to build those boundaries with him. And what that meant for me was, because he was still using, if I went over to the house, I didn't go inside. We hung out on the porch. Um, that meant if it was holidays, he wasn't allowed to come to my house, but I would bring the kids by. We would stop by for an hour, you know, sometime
Hmm.
during the holiday season. Um, that meant answering my phone 3 times a week, not every single time he called 5 times a day, you know. Um, that meant, saying, "Hey, Dad, you're in the hospital now. They're telling you you have, congestive heart failure. You might want to stop doing that stuff." Um, and ultimately, that was what killed him. He quit doing it for so long, for a little while, because of his health, and he did it one time, and that was it. You know, um, it's having those healthy boundaries. I feel like if I didn't have those healthy boundaries, that um, I could have very easily gone back, um, very easily slipped back into addiction. But as family members, it's the same thing. You have to have those boundaries with the person that's in addiction. So you need money for gas? All right, let's go to the gas station. I'll get some gas for you. I'm not giving you money. If I made bad choices and I'm in jail now, don't bail them out. Don't put $100 on their books every week either. $20 on their books. That gets them their necessities. Things like that. just building those boundaries, knowing that you're not enabling.
Yes. Jeremy says, I was that guy, homeless and was okay with it, didn't see my kids for years. But their hope trust me. You have to hit your bottom for me. For me it was hitting my bottom. That was losing everything and wanting to change. So he had to lose everything. His family seemed like everything. He had nothing. And that was the thing that brought him to change.
Yeah. And the thing
So,
about it is the thing
mhm,
about hitting rock bottom, Vivacious, is rock bottom looks different for everyone. The saying is the elevator gets off at every floor. So where does your elevator get off? Like I said, rock bottom looks different for everyone. So Jeremy's rock bottom was, being homeless and not having his kids. Somebody else's rock bottom might be, losing that job that they had because of their addiction. It might be everybody in their family writing them off. Everybody's rock bottom looks different.
so I want to talk about families. This was another part of that because we're running close. I want to talk about families and what helped it, because when you're living in that and you're not addicted, but that person lives in your home and they're addicted, I think that may produce some mental health issues too.
Absolutely.
I go to work, I do it well, I do my job well, but I don't know if I could live with that. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that family members, people that have to live with people on addiction or children on addiction or raise their children's kids or their brothers or sisters' kids, what are some of the things that they may need and they can do?
I think it's a really good idea for family members to also get counseling and to go to meetings such as, Al Anon or um, adult children of alcoholics. Um, they can go to all recovery meetings and talk to other people that are in recovery and, see what it is, what that side of it looks like. you know um, Getting connected with other people that deal with similar things so that you also have support there as well. And when I say, I'm not saying for them to get connected with people in recovery, for them to get connected with other family members of people in addiction or in recovery, because just like people in recovery need to get connected, so do the family members. They say the opposite of addiction is connection.
Oh, wow. The opposite of addiction is connection. So, tell us, um, if you can you give us some places or numbers or names of places that people with addiction and family members that have people with addiction or that feels like they need help themselves, just people out there. Could you give us some references?
So, um, the Georgia Council for Recovery, you can Google it. I think it's just Georgia Council, the number 4 recovery. Um, you can go on there and find all the RCOs in the state of Georgia. That's those recovery community organizations. They're ran by people that are in recovery, that do peer support. And a lot of times they will help you get into um, treatment, figure out what your recovery plan looks like. Like I said earlier, there's multiple pathways to recovery. It's not a one shoe fits all, a one size fits all. Uh, Somebody's recovery might be, doing yoga. Let me go do goat yoga or something. Um, I used to do an art in recovery class, because a lot of people use art and music to help them in recovery. It could be going to AA and NA meetings. It could be going to church. And those people at those RCOs are going to help you figure out what recovery looks like for you. And they can also give the family members information. I know a lady that will pick up a handful of pamphlets at an RCO, and she just randomly leaves them laying around places for people to pick up so that maybe she'll spark, planting that seed, that mustard seed of faith, that they'll get recovery. I know a guy, him and his wife work at an RCO down in Tifton. They go and put their cards, they'll go to Walmart and put their cards in cases of beer, just stick them in, and that's date night for them. So,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, it's just, planting that seed is really important. And, but other places, you can go to detox. There's Pathways in Noonan. They have detox. There's just ones I know of. If your loved one wants to go for detox, there are places, crisis stabilization units, that will take them as walk-ins, and then there's some that want you to go through the hospital. So, and you do that just going to the ER and telling them that you need a detox and that you want treatment. Some other things that really help are going to your community service boards, your state funded mental health. Most counties have some kind of state funded mental health. And because addiction is considered a mental health, they also have some kind of addiction program, whether it be classes, whether it be a drug and alcohol counselor, whatever it is, they should be able to have resources in the community as well.
Nikki, we want to thank you so much for being here because this is an issue every one of us deal with one way or another. Even if you're living with someone who's just angry, this could help us. And we thank you for laying it out there to thousands of people because, it's out there. So, what do you want to leave us with today?
I just want to say, recovery isn't always sunshine and rainbows. It can be hard, but as long as you don't put any drugs or alcohol on it, you can get through till tomorrow. Getting connected with other people is, to me, the most important thing when dealing with addiction. And just find somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to and open up about. Working on that mental health and that addiction at the same time is going to be a game changer.
Well, I want to say thank you for being here. One thing I want everybody to remember: know what makes you happy. And when you are feeling down, and when you start feeling that feeling coming upon you, because depression is an illness, it's not just that you're sad. Know what makes you happy. We learned that tonight. And make sure it's around and do what makes you happy. We want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening because addiction is something we all have to deal with one way or the other. But there's a way out of it, and it's not forever. So again, I just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Nikki, for giving your time. Thank you, Jeremy, for giving your input. We appreciate everybody tonight. Please be sure to press like before you hang up, before you get offline. Thank you very much for being here.
Love you, Vivacious.
Love you more, girl. Can't wait till I get another hug.
Yes, ma'am.